Hey nerdy knitters, it's Tanya here. In this video we're looking at the yarn over and how to work it between knit stitches, knits and purls, and purl stitches. And stick around because I have 2 tips for working a yarn over if you've forgotten one, how you can add it back in after the fact. And if you like to jump to any point in the video, check out the timestamp links in the video description box down below. A yarn over is simply wrapping the yarn around your knitting needle to create a decorative hole like you can see in this shawl right here. All of those holes are made by working yarn overs. It's also an increase, meaning that it adds a stitch to your stitch count. I've got 4 yarn overs here. A yarn over is the same no matter whether it's worked between knit stitches, knits and purls, or purl stitches. The yarn still travels around the needle. I remember when I first learned how to knit, I thought a yarn over was wrapping the yarn around the needle and then working the very next stitch, so my stitch count was always off. It took me a while to realize the yarn over, all it is, if you're knitting, the yarn is in the back. You bring it under and up and over your needle. That is a yarn over, not this in the next stitch or the stitch before, just this one simple movement. Demonstrate that again. When you're knitting, I've just completed a knit stitch, so the yarn is back here. I'm bringing it under the needle and up and over, and I'll hold it there while I knit the next stitch. So this is a yarn over between 2 knit stitches. You can see it's right there, that wrap around the needle. You can see it makes a hole underneath. It's decorative and it's an increase. It adds a stitch to your stitch count. You can see another one worked down here between 2 knit stitches right there. And it's the same movement if you're moving to a knit, from a knit to a purl. Okay, I've knit a stitch. My yarn is in the back of the work. I'm bringing it up, underneath, and over the needle. And I'll hold it there. But now I want to purl this next stitch. So my yarn's not in the right position to purl. So I brought it up and over. To purl, remember you bring it between your needles, just like that. So that yarn has further to travel. It goes up and over. I'll show you again. I've just knit a stitch. I'm going to bring that yarn underneath, up and over the needle. And now I have to work a purl stitch. So that yarn has to come to the front of the work. Remember, we move it back and forward between our needles if we're moving from knit to purl. We never bring it up and over. So I've wrapped the yarn from a yarn over. Now I'm bringing it to the front of the work. That yarn has a bit further to travel. Now I'm going to purl this stitch. And there is a yarn over between a knit stitch and a purl stitch, just like the one underneath here. You can see the hole. So sometimes you might notice the sizes of your yarn overs are different. That could be because of the stitches that are worked before and after. Okay, what about between 2 purl stitches? I'm going to purl this stitch, and now I want to make a yarn over. My yarn's already in the front, but I'm still going to make the same movement. It comes up and over the needle, and my next stitch is a purl, so I have to bring that yarn back to the front again. I'll show you that again. I just worked a purl. I'm bringing the yarn up and over the needle, and then since I'm purling, it's coming back to the front again before I purl that stitch. Now our last one, what about a purl and then a knit? There's our purl stitch. Our yarn is in the front still. We will bring it up and over our needle. And now our next stitch is a knit stitch, so it's fine right back here. So let me show you that one more time. We've just purled a stitch up and over our needle. Keep it to the back, and we can knit a stitch. And that is a yarn over. You can work it between knits and purls. But you may notice it might change size depending on how far that yarn has to travel around the needle. Now, what does that look like when we come back to the next row? Purl across here. And let's take a look at how we work those on this side. There's our first yarn over. It just sits on our needle like a stitch with the leading leg to the front. So if we wanted to knit it and leave it open, we would just do that, and we have a big hole right there. But I'm on the reverse stockinette side, so I'm going to purl it, and you purl it just like a regular stitch. Insert and wrap and purl. So we keep our yarn to the front and treat it just like a purl stitch because it's decorative. We want that hole and we want to increase. But stick around, I've got one more thing to show you after I finish knitting this row. What happens if we forget a yarn over? This is why it's important to know what's happening on your needle so we can learn a few simple ways to fix any mistakes. So there's our completed yarn overs. You can see them right here under the needle. Okay, so let's look at another pattern. Here's a bit of a decorative rib pattern. You can see our little holes, our yarn overs in there, and we've used some decreases to keep the stitch count the same. What happens if you're working a pattern and you forget to put a yarn over in? There are two things you can do. They're very simple. You don't have to tink back or rip out your work to fix it. So I'm going to start this pattern. It's a rib pattern, so it starts with some purls. And my next stitch is a knit two together for this pattern. Get in there. Ooh, it's a bit tight. And then it's a yarn over, a knit, and another yarn over. But I'm going to forget this yarn over so we can see how to fix it. And then my next one is an SSK. And then I repeat that pattern. Rib, knit two together, yarn over, knit, and I'll forget this yarn over and do my other SSK. Okay, so what if you turn your work and you're working the next row, and when I'm working a lace pattern, if the wrong side is just purling across or working in pattern, I still follow my chart to make sure I haven't missed any stitches. So what if we were working along and we noticed that we had missed a yarn over? There should have been one. Let me see, where was that? Oh, yep, there should have been one right there before this stitch. There should have been one here, and it was just on that row. And if I look here, I can see that other yarn over. Can you see it right there? Right on the needle. So if I've missed a yarn over on the row before, this is the only time you can work this particular fix. All you have to do is find the running bar between this stitch. You can see this yarn over is attached, and it's attached to this stitch. If we keep following that running bar right here, and we just pop it up on our needles, so that loop is leaning just like this other yarn over here. You can see it leans off to the left. The front leg is there. We don't put it on this way. See, it's leaning off to the right, and that leading leg's in the back. We want that right there. So we have fixed our missed yarn over, and it's back up on the needle. You see that? It's as simple as that. There was supposed to be one here, so I follow the running bar, this running thread that's attached to this stitch, and it's right here, and I just pop it up right on my needle. If you've missed a yarn over on the row before, you can just do this. It might end up being slightly smaller than the other yarn overs, but it's still there without having to take your work out, especially if you're working a detailed lace pattern and you realize you forgot a stitch. You don't have to rip it out. Okay, so I'm going to finish this row, and we'll see how to fix that missing yarn over. When you're back on the front of your work, this is usually the place I see them if I haven't been paying attention on my wrong side rows. I'll notice on the front when I'm looking at the pattern and I can see I've missed a yarn over. So there's the one we added right there. So you just pick up that running bar, pop it right up on your needle, and work it like a yarn over. It's technically a make one open that you're working on that side, but it works the same way. And when I look, I'm on the right side of my work and I can see, uh-oh, I forgot a yarn over. There should have been one right here. But now that was 2 rows away. How can I fix that? It's not very hard. You just have to know how to read your knitting. So let's work to that point. Okay, there's the first one. Okay, it should have been right here. Now, of course, I can't pop this up because that's not the right row. If you look at the one here, you can see it was 2 rows below. So what I need to do is look for this bar underneath. You can see, I'm going to pull these stitches apart a little bit. It wasn't worked on this purl row. That yarn over was worked 2 rows down. So it's 2 running bars down between the stitches. This right here. A quick way to do this is with a crochet hook. All I do is take my crochet hook, insert it. You can see I've got both running bars there. This was my purl row, this first bar, and this second one is that row where I worked the yarn overs. So all I'm going to do is catch this first bar and bring it underneath that one and put that on the needle. And remember to seat it like a regular stitch, a normal stitch with the right leg in the front. And there is that missing yarn over. And I can knit this like I normally would. And again, it's a fix, so it might be slightly smaller, but you can always give it a tug around the edges and make it a little bigger. But there is another way to fix that. If you don't have a crochet hook handy, is to just insert your needle under that second bar, just like that. So you might have to fudge them around a bit because you want them to sit like they were. This is the very top bar here, and then that second bar. We're just going to take that second bar up and over that first one. And we have our eyelet. Let me show you that again. That one's a bit tricky. I find it easier to do with a crochet hook. You insert your needle underneath both bars, trying to keep them in the same placement. The top bar and then the second one. We take that second one, pull it right up over the first. And there is our missing yarn over. That's all there is to it. If you like to get a bit nerdy with your knitting, why don't you click the subscribe button down below.